Alright, good evening and happy Halloween. Welcome back to the final show for this year of Live Ghost Stories by the Fireside. W.R. Frady. I have with me tonight a special guest who's also been a part of some of these ghost stories that I've told. Let me get rid of the sound real quick. Who's been a part of the ghost stories I've told and things. So I'd like to introduce Clint Ferguson, also known as Clintstagram Cosplay.
Happy Halloween.
Oh yeah. Alrighty. Alright. Tonight's episode of Live Ghost Stories by the Fireside is brought to you by the EvansstoneTower.com, which is the upcoming home for all things W.R. Frady. At the Evanstone Tower, you can find the Legends of Lacy Road and Tales for the Fireside. You can visit Darkhaven Manor and the home for the Vampire Killer Tales. You'll be able to see the Wise Oak and all the lore and the legends of the world of Aerith and Balador. Be sure to stop in by the Cantankerous Cauldron to see what new will be brewing up for W.R. Frady and friends in the future. Also, be sure to stop in also by Wolf Moon Studios, which is the artistic and the gallery of W.R. Frady, which will be home to featured artists, musicians, my own personal artwork and art gallery, as well as other things pertaining to the worlds and stories that I'm writing, and other artists and friends that I am associated with as well. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to try to get some of like Moonrunner and some of them on there to try and, kind of, I guess you could say, to kind of support them and, and as well as some of my fellow artists and stuff. I may even do some commissions and things to have commission pieces up for some of the artwork for some of the worlds I'm working on and things.
That'd be cool.
But yeah. So yeah, definitely the EvansstoneTower.com. It's coming soon. It's under construction, but it's due to be up between late 2021, early 2022. And yeah, so stay tuned here on either Facebook or on Instagram, and be sure to stay in touch for announcements when Evanstone Tower will be up and going. I'd also like to give a shout out to Moonrunner83, Megan McDuffie, some good friends. I would also like to give a shout out to Mickey St. Germain and Melissa Jackson Johnson, and thank them for having me on the podcast, Coach Mickey and Friends. If you haven't had a chance to catch that yet, the links are on my pages on Instagram, on Facebook. So be sure to jump on there, listen to that, give those girls a follow. They're a lot of fun. They were a lot of fun being on their show. We had a great time talking and telling ghost stories and things. So definitely go check that out. And I would like to give a shout out to The Devil's Daughter, which will be premiering tomorrow night at the Golden Ticket. It's a dark Harlequin story produced by my good friend Ron Rosman and Be Your Own Hero Productions. The proceeds of the tickets at this premiere are going to gracious hands to help families who are victimized by domestic violence get out, start over, start new lives. Basically, to make taking the event and making the world a little better place for some people. Also, Dusk series, which will be getting ready to start filming here in the next month. So, which is also produced by Ron Rosman. I'd like to give a shout out to that. Make sure you go check it out. Devil's Daughter, a Harley Quinn story will be coming on YouTube on Halloween. And then Dusk series has its own YouTube channel. You can go and watch it, or you can find it on Roku and Amazon through Avail TV. So tonight, to wrap things up, everybody loves haunted houses. Well, everybody but the people that live there. But haunted houses are one of those phenomenons that a great many people are fascinated in, for the simple reason, if you could, it's that living on that edge of the unknown. You're living in the edge of things that you can't control. And the best way to look at it is, there's a fascination with the supernatural and the paranormal and just being scared that goes all the way back to as early as mankind really knows. I mean, our ancestors used to sit around campfires doing exactly what we're doing now, listening to ghost stories, and they would tell ghost stories. They would tell personal experiences, and then they would tell of made up and just scary situations that could possibly happen, or it might not even be possible, but would just be scary if it did happen. And would try to scare one another to the point that to see who was going to be the most scared before going home at night. Matter of fact, growing up on the old road, at one time before the barn fell down, when they had that old lamplight that was out there at the end of the road.
Oh, yeah.
I always wanted to get the group of all of us Lacy Road kids out there and just sit around that old lamplight and tell ghost stories and the scariest stories we can possibly imagine, and then try to walk home at the end of the night.
We didn't have to, because the ghost stories happened to us.
You are absolutely right on that. We didn't have to just tell the ghost stories; we could live the ghost stories, but that's what helped make us be here. I mean, this is why we're here doing this now. When I was on the podcast, Mickey and Melissa asked, did growing up in that old house have any bearing on where I am now and what I do? And, it absolutely does.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, yeah. I would not have as much interest in the paranormal. The knowledge I have of the supernatural, that I continue to grow and gain in, the interest, the stories which write, the things which inspire that writing, the events that happened with me and Aaron, and then only to find out it happened to James 10 years before me and Aaron experienced it. That experience actually, and here's an insider scoop for everybody, that actually inspired Darkhaven Manor and the story behind the home for the vampire killer. So I actually took what I believe to be the murder that is unknown here in Caldwell County, or here in Granite Falls, and actually put a history to it and told the story behind Darkhaven Manor that way. So, taking a scary event and actually making a story out of it to create for a bigger story. Anyway, but haunted houses. So, how many of you love to go to haunted houses? The haunted houses like the old Hudson JC's haunted house.
Oh, I wish they still had that.
Oh, man, that was phenomenal, which is what the last story that our grand finale story tonight is based on.
Oh, that's cool.
But going to the old haunted houses, tonight I was at Lake Hickory Haunts, and if you want some great scares and some good fun, go to Lake Hickory Haunts when it's open. People there are good people. It's a lot of fun. And they're very, very very involved with what they do. So get out, support them, enjoy them, have a great time. Matter of fact, Simon Belmont made his appearance there tonight, and even he got to have a little fun. So outside of Castlevania, even the Belmonts have to have a little bit of time. But yeah, like I said, when it comes to haunted houses were a great little getaway. But we're going to start off with some houses that were haunted, but not for fun and scares, but by other things. The first one we're going to start off with happened many, many years ago, back between when I was in 7th and 8th grade. This was one of those early times when the supernatural events of my life were really beginning to reach their peak. I really became more open to the things that were going on. And I had went over to stay at my sister-in-law's house. My brother was in the Navy at the time. And during one of our stays, I found out about this old house that was right up the road from where they were living. And the old house was derelict and just falling in, and the roof was gone on part of it. But the old house also had a history of things, of rituals and things like that were going on in it that just went way back. And so I went exploring this old house with a nephew of my sister-in-law's at the time. And we went up there, and he was showing me around this area and the things that had been taking place in there. And the events of that day led me to bring one of my other friends, Clint, back. Well, during the time when we were there. Actually, the first time we were there, the events that happened was we were exploring. And in one of the rooms, we found this mannequin that the eyes had been carved out of it, and had the actual eyes that were in it. Now, I don't know if they were human or animal, but they were actual eyes that had been put back into it and just stuffed away in this place.
Do mannequins.
Huh?
I don't do mannequins.
Yeah, well, it was those styrofoam mannequin heads. Yeah, there's these model heads. Oh man, if it had been full-size mannequins, that would have been it.
Sound real.
Yes. Then underneath another side of it, you could find all these like shoes that had been stuffed up under the thing, and some of them had like blood splatters and things like that. Just some really, really uncool stuff that we were finding. But we went upstairs, and there was this hole that would drain down into this one room that was so cold. It was middle of the summer, and this room felt like it was 40 degrees in there. And it stayed that way. And it felt like you could feel something watching you through the planks of the floor. And just remembering it just brings chills up my spine. But we walked through, made our way up the stairs, and we were exploring the stairs. Well, in the first time we went up there, as we were coming down, something kept grabbing our shirts and tugging at them to pull us back up. And we got loose and went on. Well, when Clint and I went back, I had taken granted, I'd been watching Monster Squad. I knew what I was doing. But I had taken a wooden stake back with me. One that I had made to where if you turned it, it would turn into a cross. Which still sat in that doorway for years after.
Oh, yeah, because you couldn't, yeah. That's right.
But Clint and I went upstairs, and as we were getting ready to come back downstairs, something grabbed my shoulder. Now, Clint was right in front of me. Mm-hmm. But something grabbed my shoulder, and I could feel it grabbing my shoulder and kind of holding me back. So I took my stake, and I kind of stabbed it and looked back at the same time. But we heard something scream and fall. And you could see on the ground where the dust shifted, where something hit. But there was nothing there. Clint and I made tracks out of that old house.
I definitely did. You may have hung around to investigate.
I stopped long enough to put that cross stake up in the doorway. And then we took off. And man, it felt for like weeks like something was still following us from that place. So that was one of, and remember, if you've heard me in stories before, Clint was the self-proclaimed skeptic at the time. But when I say skeptic, let me clarify on things when it comes to skeptic. There is the kind of skeptic, it's good to be skeptical. It's good because you don't want to just fall for anything that's being said. But you don't want to be so skeptical that when the truth is hitting you square in the face, when it's right in front of you, that you're just denying it because you don't want to believe it. That's when being a skeptic becomes unhealthy. Being a skeptic and ruling out everything until it's like, okay, I've ruled out the obvious, I've ruled out the plausible, this can't be ruled out, That's when you're like, okay, there's something more to this than, and having something grab your shoulder, and then you hear it scream, and you see it where it hits the ground, but there's nothing there. That's kind of in your face.
That's not the house settling.
Yes, exactly. And so that haunted old house, fortunately, no longer stands, but that old house always had this eerie vibe as we'd drive by it. And that was one of the creepy stories that's from the old house of Lacy Road. And like I said, haunted houses are a great thing to go visit, to see, to have fun, to share in good times. Sometimes you just go investigating old houses and you try to see what can be found. And sometimes it's the hands that reach from the void that you may not want to experience. This next story is brought to you by Clint with a personal experience of his own. Everyone, welcome, Clint.
Welcome. Okay, I'm not the greatest storyteller, but as Randy said, I'm the skeptic of the group.
William.
Okay. So I'm the guy that's like, that's the house settling. That's this. That's an animal. That's probably a dog growling. No, it wasn't a dog growling. So this next story is, I'll call it, because he's kind of had a title for his stories, this will be called Reach Out and Touch Someone. So my parents owned this old Victorian house in Granite Falls. It's actually the oldest house in Caldwell County. It actually used to be a schoolhouse, so it's 2-story, has a wraparound porch, and we used to stay up there, stay the night. We'd take a Super Nintendo or Nintendo and play games up there, tell ghost stories. So that's sort of what we did a lot, and because it was vacant, we didn't live in it. My parents were going to fix it up, but that never happened. So it was completely original, hasn't been renovated, your typical haunted house. So one night, my wife, Bridget, and her brother, Matt, we all decided on Halloween it'd be a good idea to play with the Ouija board. Ouija or Ouija?
Ouija.
Ouija? Ouija board. Who hasn't played with the Ouija board? So we're asking questions. Is there anybody here? What's your name? And so on and so forth. So we get to the big question that you always ask when you're playing with the Ouija board.
Or you have a tendency to want to ask.
Yeah. you probably shouldn't ask this question. Actually, honestly, you shouldn't even mess with the Ouija board. This is a skeptic. This is a skeptic. So, and this happened probably, I want to say 98, probably about 1998, back when Limp Bizkit was a thing. And so we're kind of asking the questions, and we come to the main one. If there's something here, give us a sign. And you're thinking, oh, it's going to go to, the yes or the no or whatever. So at this house, there actually was a telephone, not a cell phone, an actual telephone, if anybody knows what that is. And because my dad used it as an office for work downstairs. And this was about 1 a.m. Nobody's there, obviously. As soon as we said, if there's something here, give us a sign, immediately the phone rang. And it was the loudest ring you can ever imagine. It was the creepiest thing. So we're sitting there, and we're like, I'm thinking, well, they just decided to call us. I figured they'd move something. Ain't that what ghosts do? They're just going to pick a phone up. So no lights downstairs. And of course, the light switch is on the bottom. So you have to walk down the steps in the pitch dark to turn the lights on. So I get voluntold pretty much to go answer the phone. And so I'm walking down the steps, and every step I take, when that phone rings, it's the most unsettling thing you can imagine. You literally stop in your tracks, and you get, your hair stands on end every time that phone rang. And it kept on and kept on. I was hoping to just give up. Say, well, they're not answering the phone. Nobody's home. Well, okay, good enough. No, it kept ringing, it kept ringing, it kept ringing. So I finally get down there, turn the light on, obviously, because you're safe when the light's on. Nothing can get you when the light's on or under the covers. So I go in the office, and the phone's still ringing. I mean, still ringing. So I'm shaking. I'm not going to lie. I'm like shaking, and I'm getting ready to answer the phone. And I'm thinking, what do you say to a ghost? Do you say, hey, what's up? Hello? What do you do? So I picked it up and just said, hello? And guess what? Nothing. It wasn't a dial tone. It was just nothing, as if something was on the other line and somebody was playing a prank on you and just called you and just left the line open. So it did that constantly. It never hung up. Well, I hung up the phone, and I said, we're leaving. So pretty much came downstairs because the lights were on, and we ran out the door, and you could turn the lights on as you went out the door, and we got in the car and we left. I'm out, I'm done. And there was a bunch of other times that we were up there and we experienced some things. And like I say, this is your typical haunted house. Old Victorian haunted house. And we got all kinds of EVPs we've got up there, which is electronic voice phenomenon. So I can tell you, as a skeptic, I want to have an answer for everything, but sometimes there's no answer for that. How do you explain that? Is there somebody here? Give us a sign. And then the phone rings. And nobody's on the other line. What would your logical explanation be? I'm just curious. What do you think it would be? I kind of think something answered us. Something said, okay, this is easy. There's a phone, so I'm going to make it ring. So, yeah, we got out of there. So that was my creepy little haunted house ghost story. So I'll give the floor back to William.
Thank you, Clint. I appreciate that. That's always a wild story to go out. It's funny. You brought up the Ouija board. I guess I can throw in my own story now. See, I call this one the booming voice in the night, but see, there comes a prelude to this. We were messing with a Ouija board up in the old house many years ago. This is back in the mid-90s. And, with everything that was going on, yeah, I guess you could say I was tempting fate. But we had gotten to a point where I actually had to quit messing with the Ouija board because I was feeling sick every time we would use it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. You physically felt sick.
Yeah. And the thing about it is when you read and do research on that, that's one of the first signs of possession.
It's draining you.
Yeah, it's weakening you. What a lot of people don't understand about Ouija boards is they think that you can close your eyes and do this and it's going to do it for itself. The spirit that is operating on a Ouija board is not grabbing the planchette and moving it for you. You're actually physically channeling that spirit, so it's using your senses, your body, to maneuver things. That's why the circuit is complete with a man and a woman. That way it is a full circuit and it breaks the spirit down. And the more people you have doing it, the more it breaks the spirit down and weakens the spirit. But it keeps the energy amongst you the same. However, I had gotten that point. It had gotten, that I had to start putting it. I had to put it away. That I had to get rid of it. Well, I was laying there one night. Now, first thing you gotta understand is my dad had a tendency. If you remember stories of Called by No One, or any part where my friends and I were talking about calling up from the stairs and beating on the door or something, or beating on the side of the staircase or on the floor, going bedtime. Papa would also do a lot like that to wake me up in the morning if we overslept. Well, it was an ordinary night, and we had went to bed. Everything was normal to this point. Well, at least as normal as the Frady house could be. But I was laying there, and as the night passed, I was sleeping rather well, when all of a sudden a booming voice called me by the name that I grew up going by, which is Randy. Which is why Clint called me Randy a minute ago. But this booming voice, Randy! Literally right over my bed. And as I jumped up, the first thing that crossed my mind is I thought, oh crap, we overslept, because it was the same. It was almost like when Pop and I overslept in the morning and we were having to jump up and get everything. And I jumped up and I was fumbling with my clothes, getting clothes on and trying to get myself on, and I turned around and looked, and it's 3:30 in the morning. And
your parents never wake at 3:30 in the morning.
No, not unless Pop's getting ready to go hunting.
Yeah, that's true.
But this was an ordinary day, and we were, school day, school morning, and it was 3:30 in the morning, and this booming voice had just waken me up from right beside my bed. And, I was like, okay, no, this is not happening. So I went back on there. I went back, checked around the room, checked under the bed, checked everywhere, then got my stuff back and went right back to bed and went back to sleep and tried to go back to sleep. I think it took a little while, but I eventually drifted back off to sleep to be actually woken up right the next time. But no, that was that booming voice. To this day, I still distinctively remember that. But yeah, in another story, that wasn't the only time I've had something happen that's appeared by the bed like that. Another time, Jeff Miller had come to stay. And he wasn't feeling too good and decided to sleep down on the couch. So I was laying up there and I went to bed. And there's this feeling you get in the middle of the, whether it's in the middle of the night, middle of the day, or whatever, when something's watching you or got its eyes on you, you can kind of feel that feeling, especially if you're asleep and you feel like somebody's watching you, you just wake up and because you're feeling like you're being watched. Well, I woke up and there was this shadow and it was hovered right over top of me. And it was like as soon as I moved, it raised up and it turned and walked away from the bed and then right out my door into the hallway and out. Well, here's the thing. At that moment, I wasn't thinking anything of it being anything spooky or anything like that. I thought Jeff was upstairs trying to get my attention. So I got up and I went out my door and went down the steps and I went over to Jeff. I said, Jeff, man, were you just upstairs trying to get me? Hey, man, were you just upstairs trying to get my attention or anything? He goes, no, man. I said, I've been, the only times I've been up and down is I have been going back and forth to the bathroom sick all night, which my mom actually spoke in the next day, said, yeah, the only time Jeff had been up and going back and forth to the bathroom, he'd been sick all night. And I ended up having to take Jeff back home the next day because of him being sick. But yeah, he was just, something had walked into my room and was just watching over, looking at me, just staring at me. And when it saw me move, when it saw me turn, it stood up and just turned and walked right back out the door. And it was just one of the crazier experiences of that time. Like I said, there's a lot of stories about that are old legends of Lacy Road.
And that wasn't sleep paralysis, because sleep paralysis is completely different.
Sleep paralysis is completely different. And there's a difference in feeling something clamber on top of you and hold you down as opposed to waking up and just not being able to move.
Right. That's why a lot of people might hear this and think, well, that could be sleep paralysis.
Right.
Sleep paralysis is completely different.
Yeah, well, this was actually waking up and then...
You're awake.
I woke up and started and moved and looked, and it was hovering over top of me as if it was just standing, like it was just looking. And it just stood up and turned and walked. And that's why I thought it was Jeff trying to just stand over like he was trying to get my attention.
Yeah, that's why you just brushed it off. It's like, oh, well, instead of jumping up and, what in the world?
Exactly. Now, if Jeff hadn't have been sleeping there, if Jeff hadn't been spending the night, and it was supposed to have been, it was just me doing it.
The morning star probably came off the wall.
That's happened before. That's happened before. But yeah, that was, and these were just some good legends of Lacy Road to wrap this finale up. But however, this last story is a W.R. Frady original. This comes from the Bizaar, Tales of the Strange and Unnatural. And the name of this story is, The Haunted House. You see, Brad and Lisa were taking Meredith trick-or-treating while taking her to their aunt's house for their cousin's little Halloween party. So they went from house to house, and, the streets were bustling with the activity, and trick-or-treaters, goblins and ghosts, and all kinds of things with grinning jack-o'-lanterns greeting everyone. And once they got to the end of the dead-end street that they were on and got to Candy, they went back out and traveled on down to another road where they dropped Meredith off at their aunt's. And they grabbed a few snacks of their own, and then Brad and Lisa were going to go to the old haunted house because everybody in town loved the old haunted house. So about 20 minutes later, they were standing in line and waiting and going up into the old haunted house. And they walked up the stairs, paid their way in, and got in the group that was being led through. And the first room was a barber shop, and they would sit there, and the characters in there would begin talking about what was going on, how everything was going good, and all of a sudden, as the mood set in, the strobe lights start flashing, and then the whole horror of it, and the person getting their head cut off, and everything went on, and the scares were good, and everybody was screaming and laughing and carrying on and going to the next room, and well, nobody noticed as they were going through that this mist had begun to form inside of the house. Everybody thought it was part of the smoke machines or something like that, but this mist had begun to form. Well, in the next room, they come to this old graveyard room where there was a guy digging a grave, and he was trying to get through, and the mist started rolling in. And it started getting thicker and thicker. And again, it's a misty old graveyard. You hear the bell tolling, and the guy's telling the story. Well, as the creature burst out of the coffin from the grave robber and began and pretty much strangled him and began to come through and was clawing, one of the illusory ghosts ripped the boy's shirt. And he thought, at first he thought, well, maybe I just got it caught on a nail or something, and he just thought it had happened. But still, he couldn't shake the feeling that it was there. And as they noticed that the fog had begun to get thicker in that room and had begun to fill the rest of the house. So as they passed into another room, the ape man was sitting there behind the bars, and rather than going through trying to do, something was slamming him against the doors, and the man inside was, help, help, and then these hands from the mist just wrapped around him and just grabbed him and just slammed him and then pulled him back, and he just melted into the wall, and everybody was beginning to wonder, what had started off to be part of the attraction. Things were really starting to happen, and they started hearing, Brad, Lisa, come with us. And the mist started boiling up and getting closer, and everybody was trying to get out, and it seemed like every room that they went into, the phantoms had begun to swirl, and things were happening, and even the monsters of the haunted house were trying to get away from the things that were dragging them in. And the guide got to him and was like, come on, we got to get out. The door over here is locked. Our normal exit is locked. We got to go to the emergency exit out back on the second floor. And they began going through, and a bony hand reached out and tore Brad's shirt and scratched him underneath. And then as they got to a window where they could get out, they smashed it open and began pushing their way out. And the guide was trying to help them, and as he got them out and got ready to go, the hands wrapped around him and pulled him back into the mist. And then Brad and Lisa turned around and ran from the house. And when they realized they were back on the streets, rather than being the hustle and bustle that had only been moments before, time itself seemed to have passed, for the bell was tolling close to midnight, and the streets were empty except for lonely vapors that were wisping across the streets. And then ever since that night, the haunted house had been closed, never to open again. And I hope you enjoyed the haunted house. The story was actually a little more extensive, but it's been so long since I've actually written that old story, and trying to recollect it, I could remember some of the details, but it was a lot of fun.
That's a good point, mentioned we were talking about before. Trying to recollect the details, because this is a story you essentially made up, correct?
Yes.
So you made this story up, and you said you had some trouble trying to think about this, that, and other. Whereas the stories that you experienced or we experienced, there's no thinking involved. You're not having to, like, you know, add any flair to it or think of stuff. So basically the difference in the story he made up and the stories of the Fireside that he really experienced or I experienced.
The Legends of Lacy Road.
Yeah, Lacy Road. If you'll pay attention, when he's telling those stories, there's no, he's remembering, he's not trying to think and make stuff up to add flair, or make, ooh, it's going to be spooky or whatever. You're literally just remembering, just like you're remembering anything from your childhood, you know. And when you tell it, or write it in your case, you know, he would actually, you know, write some of these down, you know, as they happen, or draw.
Yeah, I remember I used to call it the Ghostly Journal.
Yeah, or he would draw what he saw, and I wish he still had those drawings. Because I know we weren't like, you know, Picasso's back in the day, but it was just...
It might have fit more for Picasso.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. But
we weren't exactly like Michelangelo or...
Yeah, it was just so nice that I wish we still had those drawings so he could show y'all what exactly we saw. But that's the big difference in a real story and a made-up story. Made-up story, you're having to, you know, think a little bit. Right brain, the creative, you're doing this.
It's your left brain. Left brain is the one that's creative. Right brain is the logic.
You sure?
Yeah.
Positive.
I'm left-handed.
We're going to take a poll. Is right brain creative or left brain? I was thinking left brain is like...
No, believe me. You're right. You're right. Okay. No, you are right. Right-handed. I'm left-handed. I'm in my right mind. So it's creative. So yeah.
But yeah, that's
you're right.
You know, a lot of times, you know, if you tell somebody's telling a lie, they're looking up and to the right because they're accessing the creative portion of their brain. That actually does work, believe it or not. And I don't just try to, you know, be a lie detector to your buddies, whatever. But that's the one thing I brought up that I don't think anybody's thought about with his stories. He's literally just recalling it, and there's nothing to try to add to or exaggerate it. All these stories, he's told the exact same over the years, and that's why, because they really happened. It's not nothing he had to think, oh, I know what that needs. That needs some guy grabbing somebody out of the mist. That'd be cool. No, this is
something grabbed
something grabbed us out of the mist. You know, there's nothing to make up about it. So it's more easy to sit here and just casually just fire it off than trying to make up the story, you know, just for entertainment purposes, you know, this is entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
The Legends of Lacy Road is entertainment, but that's not
the purpose of it.
He's not doing this just to, you know, get views or whatever. He's just doing this to share his experiences because until now we couldn't, because we didn't have, you know, whatever, social media so we could, or you could tell your stories. Yeah. So.
And it's also to be shared so that people can enjoy the stories.
Yeah, so I want to make sure it's perfectly clear that y'all know the difference in a made-up story and a story that really happened. You can, if you go back and watch his videos, you can tell, because you've done other stories that you've made up.
Yes.
Or, you know, scary stories telling the dark. He's done those, but that's made up. But the ones that he's experienced, there's no thinking involved. He's not going, so let me think. What happened? I can't remember. No, you remember because it freaked you out, you know.
It was a marking event in your life.
You're going to remember a traumatic event, you know. Maybe not, with you, maybe not so much traumatic because you was always the one walking towards the noise or walking towards the mist, I'll be with them and, but Randy, why are you going over there? Can we not just walk that way? Why do you go poke it with a stick? So that's why I just want to, say that piece about a made-up story and a real story. You can tell a difference when somebody's telling the two. Sorry.
Oh, no apologies. I appreciate it. Thank you. Let me get back over here to the fire. Here we go. Well, I hope you enjoyed these stories, not just tonight, but this last season. It has been a wonderful Halloween season, and I've enjoyed being on here, telling these stories, ghost stories, both Legends of Lacy Road and Tales from the Fireside, as well as scary stories to tell in the dark, and everything else, and having guests like Clint and Aaron and Ginger. I appreciate having them on here. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do more and have more, maybe even do more with the fires and do them in different locations. I would love to be able to share more stories with you guys, have more of a regular program set up, and enjoy, even have some guest storytellers in here like we're doing this year. It wasn't planned, but it really, I enjoyed having both Clint and Aaron share some of their personal ghost stories. And so I'm going to leave you with one more final story, just a real short one. I've told this one last year, but just because I had a personal request for an extra story. But I want to tell this one just for the fun of it. There was a man who was slept in a room alone one night. The room was completely dark. Couldn't even see your hands in front of your face. And when he woke up, startled from a dream, he longed for the feel of a light in the room. Just the sight of a lighted match. And so, as he lay there pondering what he was going to do, he decided that he was going to reach out and find a match to light. And as he reached out to find the match, he felt one put into his hand. I hope again you enjoyed the story. You have a wonderful Halloween. Remember, EbbenStoneTower.com, coming late 2021, early 2022. Home of all things WR 480. If you get a chance to make it to Lake Hickory Haunts before this season's up, go out, support a local group, have a good time. Wherever else you may be, have a safe, happy Halloween. Thank you each and every one for joining me with these stories, making this possible. Without you guys, these stories would be nothing but words in the air and memories shared between friends. It's been awesome, amazing to share these stories, to be here and have your support, and I thank you for being a part of this. And again, hopefully I'll see you again for season 3. Until then, we'll see you in the shadows, and stay tuned to WR 480 Instagram and Facebook for more things coming up with WR 480 stories and fun to come. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, and thank you for another exciting season.
Go out and dress up for Halloween. Don't let the spirit of Halloween die. You're never too old to dress up. Don't let anybody tell you that.
Says a couple old cosplayers.
Yeah. It's okay to be strange and unusual, because only the strange and unusual can see the strange and unusual. So don't let the spirit of Halloween die. Don't be one of these people that's just, bunch of hocus pocus. That's boring. That's lame. That's stupid. keep the spirit of Halloween alive, the ghost stories, even if you're making stories up or you're hearing stories, that's all I ask. But happy Halloween. It's on a Sunday. Most of y'all are probably going to do your trick-or-treat tomorrow. And I'm going to go probably take pictures at the lake access here in my Jason costume.
Nice.
So I'm sure somebody's going to call the police on me, which is going to be ironic.
It is going to be ironic because, well, the police is here. Take off your mask.
Yeah, I can't take my mask off, but what law am I breaking? So, but yeah, that's all I want to say is keep Halloween alive. And that's why I like what he's doing is it keeps, and like he went back to the whole reason I think people want to be told ghost stories or go to haunted houses is they get that adrenaline rush and they feel alive.
It's the thrill.
Because you're scared.
Yeah.
And when you're scared or you're, that's your body saying, hey, you're still alive.
If people didn't want to hear ghost stories, they wouldn't be watching the Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, or anything. All these, Travel Channel and all that, and Discovery and them wouldn't have so many different ghost haunted places and stuff. That's year round, not just one time a year.
And we were ghost hunters before it was cool. We should be making millions of dollars. They stole our idea. This is us. But...
Well, they took their own thing and ran with it.
Yeah.
And we're still right here. But, we got great experiences and great memories from it.
And I've got better EVPs in the pictures than they do. But, yeah, that's all I want to say is keep Halloween alive. Keep the spirit of Halloween alive. Stay spooky.
Absolutely. And whatever you do, make each memory something that'll last. Something that'll always give you something to look back on fondly. And and even be able one day to share your own stories.
Yeah, 30 years right here.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you again. Have a wonderful Halloween. Peace out. Love each and every one of you. Have a good Halloween, and see you next year.